Hey,
Hello,
I'm
Kelsey.
great. The weather here is absolutely amazingly beautiful.
Nice. Are you in Colombia still?
Yeah, I'm still in Colombia.
Nice. Colombia, Germany. Viv, where are you? What country are you in? You're in Peru still? Yeah, right, Peru. Cool. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, you're muted, Viv. You're muted.
Love it, love
But
it, love it, love it, love
but
it.
we're connected. We know what you're saying.
Yeah, I can channel thoughts sometimes, baby. Okay, we'll give it a few more minutes for the boys to show up. Everybody's late, it seems.
Yeah, not
There he is.
everybody.
Michael's
Michael is
here. What's up,
there.
Mikey? Welcome, buddy.
Hey guys, I'm here.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Mike,
How are you doing?
holding the northern front.
I'm curious what people found if they looked for land or not past couple days.
Yeah. Let's see if anyone found an interesting piece of land for
Let's
them.
let's compare prices.
Yeah. Yeah, we did some research on Honduran land here, to compare like land from like within this project that we're in, that set up the whole legal infrastructure, and then land that's like right in between two properties it owns, and the price difference at that piece of land, right? It's like $100 a square meter for like land within the property, which is like quite expensive. It's like $100, $1 million for a hectare. And then right outside of it, in between two lots that they own, but that's privately owned by someone else, and it's outside of this like governmental special thing. The special economic zone. The land there is only 1250 a square meter. So it's like almost a 10x difference.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. There's a guy here that's like, yo, let's buy that land and build there, and then we'll add it, because in the laws
Yeah.
you can add it to this special economic zone. It's like opt in.
Oh,
Yeah. So quite interesting opportunities in that like zone. To like automatically be in the zone, and have your own piece that you purchase for a different price. It's pretty interesting
a-
situation.
and then after you opt in, the price will grow by 10x.
Right, yeah, because you can with someone else that sell shares of it, right? I'm an awesome diagram. Actually, let me upload that photo right now. That's like the final thought to last course. I upload that here. It's my text. Yeah, it's pretty unique. Yeah, cool, you guys. Okay. We wait.
Well, I was just spent a bit of time this morning looking at land near this town that we're in now. And it reminded me why we never bought land in the province of Ontario. Because
It's expensive for what?
it's way more than just the province over where we did buy.
Right, yeah. Because it's more developed, it's more
Yeah, where is
city,
that
or
coming
what?
from?
Let me see.
Ontario is the densest populated province in
Right.
Canada,
Right.
especially southern Ontario, and it's like also all like prime farmland.
Okay, yeah, Ontario. I'm looking at it on the map right now. Yeah,
So it was
south
like
with the
I think it
US.
was like there was one lot of 25 acres. So an acre is what? I think hectares a hectare is 2.5 acres.
Yeah. It's like a little.
So I guess that's 10 hectares. And it was 1.75 million.
1.75 million. Yeah, wow. Right. The more dense it gets, the more expensive it gets for sure. I'm
Yeah.
uploading now. One of the presentations we saw over the weekend is a big company that is focused on this concept of startup cities, and like looking at it from like a purely like entrepreneurial lens of like, this is the next big business, right? Is
Right.
like creating cities as a product for people. So I'm gonna put this photo right here.
It's
And
not a bad idea.
dude, it's interesting, right? So if you guys are on the Miro board, I just put it in between last week's session, session 8, and then this week's session, session 9. And it's like he presented this graph of like the appreciation value of land when you enter at different phases of the land, right? And so the land you're talking about is already kind of urban-esque, right? Because it's the most populated, not necessarily urban, but already developed. When you guys are in there, you'll see the little like multipliers. Like you can 3x the value of land by taking one big piece of land and cutting it up into smaller pieces of land. You can 5x the value of the land from turning it restricted to unrestricted, which means like getting this special economic zone title by a country, for example, right? Like here they have different tax laws and different laws around biotechnologies. If something is undeveloped and you take it to developed, it's a 10x appreciation. When something is rural and you turn it into an urban scape, that's a 30x evaluation. And then the biggest one is like, if you find less developed countries, like third world countries, and turn them into first world like levels, it's a 100x return. And then the crazy thing is, he had described that they're not independent multipliers, right? So like, if you find a rural place and turn it urban, that was also, and you got it from like one big piece and you break it up into smaller pieces, it's a multiplier. So it's like 30x plus 3x. So you can be looking at like 90x returns on land. So it's right with a bit of business acumen and the right pitch and positioning, land projects like this have huge upside and huge like stored potential energy of value in the land, right, as land development projects, and creating a place that has no like use, all right, obviously besides the nature. And if we do it correctly, it leave the nature, but also add like a human value to it. There's just like all the money and value we need to build the project out lives there on the land in the project. So like it like urges me to get better at what we're doing, to not allow greedy business people to see this and catch wind of this, which they already are, and they're making their move, and at least be able to infiltrate and inject the right like sustainable practices, regenerative practices, and all of those things. And that's what we're talking about today, which is sustainable systems, and like master planning our sustainable systems, which sadly, I've noticed a lot of this demographic of business-minded individuals, mission-driven, right? I've now differentiated the two kind of like ends, like two sides of the same coin, right? Where we started our journey was more like the intentional communities and the eco-village world, where it was more like human-based and kind of a more like lifestyle-based, like, oh, we're like leaving the matrix so we can live a better life. The big issue there was these people didn't really implement solid business practices. They disregarded technology, which is a big mistake in this evolving world. It limits their connection, it limits their resources to humans, et cetera, which is why they face financial issues and human like capital issues, like people being at their place. So this was like the more grassroots, bottom up side, as I consider it now. And now entering this space, doing the same thing, creating communities, land projects where people will live, is coming this like mission-based business entrepreneur person that is coming with like the goal, like here, of creating a biotechnology incubator community, or other ones that our goal is to create a financial vehicle country, like in Singapore. And so this union of these two is super necessary, right? Because without the lifestyle, this is just going to be like a permanent conference place where like families won't live and it'll never really become a city. And on the other side, if you only have lifestyle and no mission, you're going to run out of money and you're not going to have a strong enough like lightning rod to attract the people to leave their city in New York or leave their city in anywhere in Europe and come to this place, because if it's just lifestyle, you can get lifestyle anywhere, right? So they really need each other, these two halves. And the challenge here, rather the opportunity, right, as I reframe my verbiage, is the opportunity is to this group of people, the business entrepreneurs, they're very mission driven. So they tend not to like want to get off their missile. And injecting into them and presenting to them in the right marketing language why radical sustainability is actually the freedom that they're looking for, by setting up special economic zones with governance and like, oh, we want to be free from unfair taxes and we want to be free from unfair medical regulations. Yes, definitely. And yes, real freedom is not being attached to a system where you count on for your water source, for your food source, and your energy source. And so this is like the paradigm shift, right? Where in our first iteration of this journey, we were dealing with very sustainable minded hippie crowd that already loves the environment. So like selling sustainability to them was almost redundant. They were already about it. They just needed the resources to do it. Now the world that we're stepping into is a resource-rich, like execution powerful group, and inceptioning them with this mindset that like here, for example, everyone's about longevity and let's live forever. Let's extend our lifespan by 500 years. Awesome, cool idea. And what planet are you going to live on if we don't have any water or air to breathe or food to eat when you're living to 500? Like it's going to be a miserable life.
It becomes taking care of your home that much more important when you're really going to be here.
Because you're going to be here. So it's not just about your kids in the future, it's about you in the future. And so identifying that desire in these groups and pitching the key components of our mission, regeneration, sustainability, right? Resilience, all of these beautiful words, is a big focus for us right now. And so this is where we come into the nitty gritty of that is how do we become resilient? How do we become sustainable and all of these beautiful things? And that leads us to our chapter 7, which is master planning our sustainable systems. So I invite you guys into the Miro board. Let me know when you're all in there. All right, so as you realize, you guys, every chapter that we
You
go
want me to
deeper
share
now.
it? Do we share my screen?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
do we
if
share-
you can share your screen if you like. It's great. I do that. Yeah, my internet's acting really funny. I think my camera's working. Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys. So master planning our sustainable systems. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you scroll to the left, you can see that little diagram that I shared. No, other side, in between 7 and 6.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in between 7 and 6. That was yeah, this was the slide that that guy shared. Like that's the multiplier effect of like let's say the upside of creating places like this, right? The power that is coming now with like, let's say like, right, in the past as civilization gets better, technology gets better, individuals are more empowered to create like global corporations, right? Like look at Jeff Bezos from his garage, started Amazon, right? One dude, and obviously had a team in the future, but like one dude pretty much masterminded the creation of one of the biggest corporations in the world. The same goes for cities, right? Like historically, it's been kings and big governments that start cities, and right, obviously the government evolves, but it's been based a lot of the time. It would have been crazy for someone 50 years ago to be like, I'm going to start my own city. You know, it would have been like, yeah, okay, sure, crazy guy, like go get checked out. But today it's like very much possible with the internet connecting people and all of this. I'm like inspired by it, and I'm also like feeling a sense of rush because as money gets put into the limelight, right? Taking what one guy at the conference said, like we can design hopefully, but we have to live practically, right? And we understand where the world is today, and we very much do live in a capitalistic, money-driven society. So when people see money on the table, it's like blood in the water for the sharks. And we really need to expand the footprint of this movement and be kind of like setting the trend. I see a good inclination in that way. Like we presented we got a presentation ready, which if we have time at the end of the call, I'd love to share with you guys. We can share our presentation that we shared. of like the evolution of regentribe, which is now going from like understanding the social fibers of the communities and understanding the journey to create a place, to now connecting with this mission-driven demographic, right? And the evolution is a project we're calling a Startup City Group. So taking the groups of individuals, these startup societies, and helping them design the perfect city for them, right? Their perfect community. We're just using the word city now because it's more familiar to this group. They can imagine a metropolis of money and generation and this, with the lens of culture, mission, and infrastructure, right? And so today we start the conversations of infrastructure. Last week we talked about land and financing and all of that. And this week we are going into now sustainable systems. So you want to kick it off, Sue?
Sure. Maybe let's kick it off with a reminder and reflections from last session. So I wasn't present with you guys, only caught the ending, which was the marketing. I know Oscar went through some more in-depth exercises with you guys, how to evaluate the cost of your neighborhood, how to calculate different amenities. How that was a cool exercise. So yeah, that was last session. Identifying your funding and strategize marketing. I think marketing is definitely the shining light in the whole process, and something that should be holistic, taken each of the other departments of the project, and should be reviewed at all times. Also, definitely hiring a person that's going to be strictly handling marketing, or even a whole team if you're dealing with a big project. So that just as a reminder to be knowledgeable about all these things at the same time, and not holding back on calling a service provider when it's needed, and it's needed in almost all of these steps that we've outlined. So you guys were calculating an initial cost, and then a more in-depth calculation of needed funds based on priority, amenities, and essential infrastructure. We went briefly through funding methods. There was a regenerative neighborhood case study. I think it was TDF, which is a really cool example, very new age. I think Jem mentioned it a week before, so I think some of you are familiar with that project. Definitely worth looking up. And Alma do Solo, another cool project in Portugal. We went through a marketing checklist, which is the basic documentation that you need for your project, and then the content that is reflecting that documentation. So why, how, what document, one pager, a deck, and a website, and ideally a couple of profiles on niche focus platforms like Tribes, IC.org, Gen, and so on. And then we very briefly went through popular outreach channels with demographic and content characteristic. So I know it was pretty short. I think it was only like 5 minutes. I think it's a really important topic. So when you have time, definitely go through the marketing channels again, and possibly add the ones that you're in favor of, maybe that are not listed in there. It's a pretty high level list of the basic ones that you probably should recommend to the vision holder to post their content on, and create different lenses of documentation and content. So any reflections about last session? Something that was lingering in your mind? Any seeded thoughts that evolved into something that you would like to share?
Yeah, did everyone look for a property price, an estimate of like, oh, this is a piece of land I would like, and like the cost? Mike, you shared one just now, like 1.7 million.
How big is the land?
It was like
It was 10 hectares for 1.7 million around the town that I'm living in now.
That's decent.
Yeah, like when you do that breakdown, like for example, Cuyabé, the big project in Mexico that we're working with, where like you're not buying raw land, you're buying a piece of land, your lot on one piece of land that already has roads and amenities and like some comforts to it. 1 hectare there right now, the price has gone up in the last 6 years from 90,000 was the introductory price per hectare, right? In your land, if you're looking at like 175,000, it went up to now 180,000 in the last 6 years. So it's doubled in price in like 5 years, more or less, since they've been selling. So like the land there in that place that's already developed, or at least has roads and basic amenities for the community members and a lot of stuff coming, is in that ballpark. So yeah, it's quite pricey where you're looking at, Mike.
Yeah, and this is just a forest on a road with a gate.
Yeah, right. Which is right. We saw like building roads is already going to be a chunk of change.
Yeah, you can see how roads threw up the price of their IKEA Bay.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, anyone else? Did anyone see any pieces of land or interesting ones? It is your homework, right? Because we will be using that figure, so make sure you guys get that done in your workbook, right? When we review each one of your workbooks and we go through each like case study with each of you of like, okay, I've picked my piece of land, it's about this price, and these will be the things I want to build, and here's my rough estimate for what that's going to cost, and so forth and so on, as we do a practical application with each of us. As we like come to the end of the course, and that'll be kind of our like recap that you're familiar with the information. Remember, it'll essentially be a journey of you answering all of the questions in the agent workbook for yourself, for your dream community. We can also do that with a project you find that's in the wild. Like if you find a project you align with, you will work with that community and you will be the agent asking them those questions and filling in the workbook for that project. That'll be a variation of this exercise that we will do with you guys, kind of to like conclude the course. Let's consider it like the final exam of this agent course, to recap and see that you have understanding of everything. Again, it's not like pass or fail. It's more like, okay, let's see where maybe some information is missing so we can make the course a bit more robust for the next iteration. And get you that information so you feel confident with asking those questions to the vision holder or yourself and answering all that in the book and then uploading it to the tribe's platform.
Yeah, it's really important that you are familiar with the workbook and the Community Alchemy guide, right? We're doing the mirror board to make it fun and interactive, and it is reflecting all of the questions that we have both in the Alchemy guide and the workbook. At the same time, when you're going to be with the vision holder, where you're going to be using more are it's not the mirror board, it's the workbook and is the alchemy guide. So getting familiar with that, filling in the questions for yourself, and then we're going to do a case study based on an example of a regenerative neighborhood that you look up to, that you like, maybe you know them and they need support, and so it's going to be like the in real life practice of all of the things that we discussed, and possibly you scheduling a call with a vision holder and guiding them through the process. And then we're going to have like a call to review the reflections from that and serve you more support. How is the workbook filling in going for you guys? I would like to know.
Well, I'm going in depth on a vision document.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good, man. That is like the measure twice, cut once. From that, everything builds. So cool. Take your time on that. Start considering other little pieces, right? As you like answer some questions, go, oh, that's the thing I need for this thought, right? Like how many people, or what are my missions for my community? What will I need to build? How much land will I need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so without further ado, we get started with today. So we start with the concept of the land, right? Always land. The last call, we understood what it costs to buy some land, what it costs to build on the land. So the first question in this journey of sustainable systems is, how will we honor the land, right? A big, let's say, metric for projects that are more sustainable or regenerative is the ratio of land being kept natural and as green spaces versus how much land will be altered by us as the humans coming in, right? And so these are the things we need to consider in this conversation is, what will we need land for, right? Obviously roads, we need access, number one, as you go through the journey. Okay, Mike, you buy that piece of land for $1.75 million. Excellent. You have a gate and you have a road that comes into this gate. First things first, we got to put roads on the land, right? This requires moving trees, opening space, and altering the natural environment. Your roads are considered a piece of this development part. And you now start eating into the percentage of land that is left natural versus land that is developed. The next thing, once we have the roads, we need a place to lay our head down and have a base camp. So homes, shelters, structures, super important. We reviewed last week a ballpark of what it looks like for building a home at different levels of finish, right? You can consider ballpark like a 1-bedroom house costs anywhere from 100 to 300,000 or 200,000 to build. And then it scales up from there, how big and lavish you want your home. The next piece to that is once we have our home, we need the systems that support that home, right? We need our water system, we need our plumbing system, our water waste system, and we're going to go into these topics in detail on this call. Water being one of the most important, right? Like you can only live a day or two without water. And the water system has two spectrums. It has the water we'll use, which is like potable and tap water, drinking water, and water we use for daily life. That's one face of the water conversation. And the other face of the water conversation is our black and gray water. Once we've used this water, how do we manage that water? We're not just going to dump it on the land, right? We'll make our land toxic. It's one of the big issues happening in Tulum, where people built very quickly, and it's very easy to forget, or like intentional for some people to save the money on a water system, and they just drill a hole and they pump their sewage into the water in the like water table beneath the land, which is why in Tulum, when you're more inland and there's no houses behind you, the water is okay to use out of the pump. It's a little bit heavy, like has calcium, but you can use it for things. When you get more into the city, as the water flows from the mainland out towards the ocean, the water becomes, I don't want to use the word toxic, but not really safe to ingest at all. You definitely cannot drink it. In some places, some people even mention that when they're taking showers, right, their hair feels like sticky, that they get ear infections from getting water in their ears, or like they can't even brush their teeth in some places when it's like really popular, the city's really busy, because people are literally pumping sewage and there's fecal matter in the water, which is like huge risk, both for the community and for the nature. So the sustainable systems, where we will install water pumps, water capture systems, and then management systems to clean the waters in very effective ways that exist today. You just have to really design for those things. Also things like energy. Where are we going to put our solar panels? Where are we going to put our battery systems? Again, you can't necessarily leave the nature when you put a whole bed of solar panels. You can put them on top of your house. You can put them in different areas, and there's strategies to minimize the land that we have to change for that. So this requires a series of thoughts. Also, right, water, energy, food. Where are we going to be growing our food? There are systems now that leave, instead of like clearing out land and putting rows of corn or rows of the same kind of food, which is like traditional farming, industrial farming, you can call it, not the best way to do it. Not the way nature does it. There are new ways that are called like syntropic agroforestry, where we honor the nature that's there. And instead of removing everything, instead we make some spaces for food-bearing plants. We essentially speed up the process of nature that over time, it would do this. It would create the initial trees, which are the pioneer trees. This is another topic I nerd out about. I really love it. Right, the initial trees are there to open up the land and make a bunch of biomass, right? Leaves fall, trees fall, and create a more rich and nutritious soil, where at some point, some animal is gonna fly by or walk by and drop a seed in the ground, which begins the journey of food bearing and plant bearing, fruit bearing plants. With syntropic agroforestry, we speed track that process. So it doesn't take thousands or hundreds of years. It can just take a few years or decades. So food growth, we'll be discussing a few of those options later on. Also topics of green spaces and parks, and then straight up land for conservation, right? So with all of this, we look at some examples. So you get a range of what is in the market right now. Right, we have been involved with a few projects, and these are the spectrum that we've seen. Some projects have really strong commitments to land conservation and leaving the nature as untouched as possible, right? Projects like this do less than 10% of development. So for 1 hectare, you'd only be able to build on 1,000 square meters, right? Which is pretty big still. But still, 1 hectare is a big piece of land. And so this, in some regards, can be seen as like a challenge to, right? When you have a big piece of land, the more people you can bring on and build homes for, the more value you can extract. But there needs to be a balance between how many people we put on the land and how much the land can hold. If we design better, it can hold more. If we're just throwing people around, it becomes disorganized. So this is why we need to design and go through this process better. Again, we are not experts and like the final say on any of this. We are just being introduced to these topics and want to be familiar with this conversation to help guide our vision holders through that process. Right, let me open up the
Yeah, like Michael, when you deal with raw land, of course we can dream about all the things that we want. At the same time, the right way to approach it is to get a professional that can help with the landscape and then act on that. Sometimes we as humans come with our vision board. Okay, I want these sustainable systems, and I want my house to be located here, and I want the park to be located here. And the land that you're working with, obviously you can do that. You can cut down the trees and do your dream master plan. At the same time, it's probably going to cause you problems in the long run, for the reasons that Oscar mentioned, like the landscape. If it's a little bit uneven, maybe this will be the place for the permaculture site, and this will be recommended to you by a person that's a professional. So that's definitely a recommendation if you're talking to a vision holder that is now buying land, considering land. Definitely recommend do an assessment of the landscape with a professional.
Okay, so
Definitely ask the beavers also.
ask the beavers, yeah, they know.
Yeah, first talk to the beavers.
They know. So right, less than 10% development is like really bold and like really beautiful if you have the, let's say, financial support, and you have like really good planning, and also a group of people that are interested in investing extra money to keep a lot of land conserved. In the next round, we see projects that are in the 20 to 40% of development, right? So anywhere from 80 to 60% of the land remains natural and almost or pretty much untouched. And the 20 to 40% of it has development on it. Most projects are in this range that we're finding. I read through some developers and city planner like documentation online, and they say that there's a golden ratio of 40 to 60. That in the 40 to 60 range is where you can create the most upside for your project financially, and you can also leave enough green space that it provides a really rich natural stillscape for the individuals, right? So it's somewhere in between. That's the norm right now for development, somewhere between medium and low conservation, which we hope to be better, right? We hope to create better systems and better designs that prioritize nature over financial returns. And this is why we're putting this extra thought into understanding this. And this is the inception seed that we want to put into people while we're working on these things. Okay, I can share my screen if you like, if you wanna pass it over to me or. Okay, and obviously then there's like the less developed part, which is like urban, in an urban place like New York City, right? You're looking at like 95% development. Where like the majority of stuff is concrete and pavement and buildings, and there's almost no connection to nature or nature left untouched. Even the parts that are nature are like designed by humans. It's like a park that was like totally ripped out and then trees were replanted. Okay, so this is the first topic. Can you switch over to the agent workbook?
Yeah.
Screen. Okay, cool. Scroll to the question one. So remember, you guys, your journey is based on the agent workbook. This is essentially, right, the alchemy guide is your textbook, and this is the workbook that you will be holding as you encounter vision holders in the wild. As you're engaging with creators of communities, you yourself as a creator of community, as you do the exercises, or someone with a project, this is the flow of questions that you will be asking in this section, right? Question one is, what percent of the land are you developing? Right, so I share with you those figures, so you have kind of a context of like, okay, if you're really, really conservative and you want to save nature, you're under the 10% mark. If you're in the medium space, you're between 20 and 40% development. And if you're not so saving the land, you start developing more than 50% of your project, and it's mostly buildings and less nature. So that's the first question, right? We have a little bit, go back to the mirror board. Okay, cool. So yeah, so these are the numbers, kind of the values, so you can have an understanding of it when your client, your vision holder asks, okay, well, what's counted in that? Like if I have a park with sidewalks, is that still nature? It can be in some ways. If I have a farm, is that still nature because it's all plants? It can be in some way. So there's a little bit of a gray space in what is nature and what is like built environment. Again, introduction to this topic so that you are knowledgeable about it and can hold a conversation with them to guide them through answering the questions in the agent workbook. All right, so we move from, go to the next question in the agent workbook. Okay, cool. So now that we've established what the goal is for land, usually the way it works is that first question gets answered best by the following questions, right? It's like a summation of all of the questions beneath it. So we start with water first, right? And these are the two coins, the two sides of the coin that I shared with you of water, right? We have our freshwater systems and we have our wastewater systems. Fresh water being water we can drink and use in our house, our tap water, our shower water, even water we can water our garden with. There's like a cool little trick there that we're gonna go over in a minute. And then wastewater. How do we manage the stuff coming out of the toilets? The stuff running through the sinks and the stuff that's coming off of like any cleaning or whatever that we're doing. Okay, go back to the mirror board. I can take over so you can do stuff on the computer. Okay, you guys, so here we have shared some water systems. Can you give me the
Yeah,
sharing?
I'm gonna.
It's like challenging for me.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so these are water systems. Start reading through some of these systems. We're gonna go through them a little bit in detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oscar's gonna take over.
Okay, where's my agent?
No, do you have the mirror open?
Yeah, that's I'm using a short window. Sure. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so we're here. Okay, so water systems, right? We are going to review the types of water systems that are in this journey. Are you seeing it? Yeah, cool. Okay, so to understand water systems, again, we separate it into two groups. We have the water systems that we're going to be drinking and using in the house, and the waste systems that we're going to be managing. These questions are the questions that we want to ask. Well,
Yeah, just make it bigger. It's pretty. Small.
Yeah, I just wanted to see the whole thing. Right now.
Okay.
Okay, so before we go into these details, we can go through like the journey of water, right? How we started this conversation was that in a really beautiful system, we have the ability to do the whole reduce, reuse, recycle model, right? And water is definitely one of these topics. In a beautiful system, we waste and create very little water that we don't reuse over and over and over again in many ways, right? So I want to direct you guys here to this like journey of water as a start, right? So let's say we start the journey of potable water with tap water, right? Water that we're either capturing from rain or water that is coming to us from a well. These are the two most common ways of capturing water to use in our system. As well, people have access to lakes and rivers, and that's all beautiful as well. We'll consider that being pulled from nature. Usually in some places, right, like I'm sure in parts of Canada, the water is so pristine coming off like snow on the top of a mountain and running through a river that we can just drink water out of the river, drink water out of the lake nearby. In best practices, right, you never know when like maybe just someone up the river from you could be like maybe farming and dropping pesticides into the water. It could be a risk. So our first phase in the water journey water is collecting. So we capture water first, either through rainwater or well water or rivers. This then moves into a process called filtering, right? We need to optimize this water to put into our bodies, just in case there's contaminants or any other kind of things like this. There are multiple options of filtering systems that are out there, right? The most common that you can consider are carbon filter systems, which is like a Brita, right? Like the Brita filters that we use in our houses or that you put right on your sink and your tap. There's also bigger ones that go underneath your sink that can produce a ton of water. These can have multiple stages even. Carbon filter is enough for really few places. In some places, you also want to do a reverse osmosis system, which like passes the water between a membrane and filters out any of the micro contaminants that can affect a person's bodily system. And then there's also UV treatments, right? So we have explanations for each one of these in here, what this looks like what reverse osmosis does, carbon filters and UV light filter systems. We have more details in the alchemy guide. I would love you guys to open up the alchemy guide real quick. I can just switch between windows. Great. Okay, and I'm going here to alchemy guide, and I want to share this. Okay, so in alchemy guide, you can see like our first thing that we discuss is the master plan strategy, where we started. What is the master plan? What are the steps to executing a proper master plan, right? Mike, you're spending a lot of time on your vision document. This, if you notice the trend, is the first step in every process that you're going to follow when creating your community. Everything is based on the mission and the vision of your community. From there, we do the site analysis, which is understanding the land. We engage with the community always to get feedback and understand the needs of the individuals of this community. We design with principles that maximize our use of land while minimizing our impact. And this is what really good design can do, right? And we're gonna do the first example with water as we go a little bit deeper. Okay, so we identify the land. I want you guys also, I go through the alchemy guide. Is that what's showing on the screen right now, the alchemy guide?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, yeah. I want you guys to be familiar with the alchemy guide in that this is your textbook, right? When you look at your agent workbook, for example, you will be able to reference topics of like drinking water, tap water, what are the systems, all in the alchemy guide, right? Like, let's get down here to, like here you can see let me take one step back, like for development plan, you can see how we describe the areas and what that is considered. So you can explain that in the simplest way to vision holders that might not understand what it means to have a private green space compared to undisturbed conservation land, to make sure that their numbers are more accurate in their development estimates, right? So we go back to water management. In here also, we are making a point to share key facts that can give you what I consider to be like an edge, right? That can give you like a knowledge point where when you talk to a vision holder and you go, okay, well, how much water will you need to create with, how many filters will you need to buy for drinking water? Okay, great. We have an estimate here based on the US, which I think the US consumes more than most places, is kind of the, the harsh reality in life is, I zoomed in too much. Okay, wealth of knowledge in here. Yeah, in the US, right, which consumes a lot, this diagram shows us that the average is about 100 gallons per day per person, right? Which is a lot of water per person. Too much, I would say. When you have the right systems in place, you can really decrease this number by even 50%, even more, I've seen. So when estimating, okay, well, how many water filters will we need, right? And your vision holder says, well, I want this many people in my community. How many water filters will I need? Okay, well, you find water filters that can filter X amount of liters per day for drinking water. And here, based on this chart, we see that if we use 100 gallons a day or 379 liters per day per person, only 4% of that is for eating and drinking, right? We realize that 40% of that goes to body care, showers pretty much. The majority of water that we use is spent in the shower when water is just running freely. The other big consumer of that is toilets, flushing toilets. A really powerful solution in projects to minimize costs is to use dry toilets. Who's used a dry toilet before? Who's like had experience using a dry toilet? Right. Who's ever built a dry toilet?
Can I share
Does
just
the
my
bucket count?
my
Your dry toilet.
experience of living up in the mountain in the indigenous hut for a month? They don't use any toilet system, and it's just like you find a place over there. They don't even have a designated spot where they go. They just go out in nature, different places every day, and it's just like, yeah. And there's lots of different types of leaves to use, so it's a really good dry system.
You go out for walks and find poops laying around, or how does it work?
Yeah, but there's also lots of animals around, so you find poops of all different types of beings. But there's animals that they have like pigs and horses and dogs, and they eat it, so it gets used again sometimes.
Yeah, interesting. And so, right, like in a town, in a village like that, how many people would you estimate live there, Kels?
Oh, it's very, very remote. It's each house is like you have to walk a long way to get to another house.
Right. So in a place like that, not so dense, right? Like nature has its own filtration system, right? If we're using the soil correctly, and when you're that sparse, like making a hole in the ground. Oh shit! I got disconnected.
No, you're there. I think I see Kelsey moving.
Okay, hey guys, sorry, we're having internet topic right now.
Yeah, I think
Can you guys hear
you're
me?
there.
We see you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm gonna turn my video off
Think
just
you
for
were
like
saying
saving
Oscar.
bandwidth. There's a bunch of people in the house right now, I think, using internet. So can I use your charger for a second? I'm
Yep.
curious about that. Okay, right. Okay, I'm back in the game. Okay,
So the
so
question of density you were saying, Oscar.
yeah, density, right?
Absolutely.
When people are sparse, nature can handle itself, right? As long as you're like putting stuff in a hole, the soil itself eats our human waste, and this human waste actually feeds the soil in a lot of beautiful ways. A dry toilet is a way like one step up from like everyone just like pooping in the ground, right? To concentrate it and with a little bit of focused effort to like put sawdust or organic matter on it, that it processes this waste a little bit better, a little bit faster than we put it in a holding space. And this facilitates the processing of this soil so the earth doesn't have to handle all of it. We do a little bit of that. The next step up from that is having like a septic system, right? A biodigester that speed tracks the process of breaking those things down when we start getting more concentrated and there's more human waste in the area. All right, let me go back. Am I sharing your screen right now? No. Let me share my screen.
We were using a vermiculture composting system for
Okay, cool.
all waste management.
Okay, nice. Like for solid waste, also like bathroom waste.
Yeah, bathroom solid waste, and kitchen waste, kitchen scraps, and the worms would eat it all up.
Yeah, right.
Quick.
Yeah, using nature in a beautiful kind of partnership to support us humans and to put less strain on the soil itself. The biggest risk being that the contaminants could trickle down through the soil and enter the water table, right? This is what we cannot allow to happen. Another step up from that is like having the dry toilet. One step up again is having a biodigester that is more water-based, and then having a manufactured wetland, right? We discussed a manufactured wetland in our, I think, previous call or the call before that. And so these are some of the solutions that you can see here that are like a biodigester. We should add dry toilet in here as well, because that's like a simple solution.
But dry toilet is not really water treatment, it's more waste management.
That's true. I'll put it in the solid waste management, right? So these are like key components, right, of managing our waste. So if we have a well right next to our house and we're dumping like our waste next to our house, there's a high risk that this waste could trickle into our water table and enter the water that we're pumping back into our house. So we want to kind of give that waste a little bit of like a nudge and accelerate the decomposition process and the denutrification process. So we are not intaking all of that into our water systems at the house. Okay, so I continue with the journey of water here.
Hi guys, sorry, I'm just jumping in. I'm so sorry. Happy to be here.
What's up,
That's okay.
Edo? Welcome. Today is sustainable systems, and we have just started the topic of water and the journey of water, right? Near and dear to our hearts, especially in Tulum, where we see it's like a big challenge and like a lack of infrastructure and a lack of people implementing solutions, and a high concentration of individuals has led to the water table, right? What we were just describing being tainted by waste. There's fecal matter in the water. So by putting in the right systems at different levels based on density, we can support nature in doing its part while we also do our part in that process. All right, so again, the journey of water, we capture water and we have our storage of water. We filter it for drinking water. When you do like a lot of filtering, like reverse osmosis to take out all the bad stuff, a lot of the times, or all the times in reverse osmosis, you also take out the good stuff, the minerals that are like nutritious to our bodies and that our bodies actually need for different processes. So there's also a third phase, which is the remineralizing process, where once you've taken the bad stuff out, you essentially infuse the water again with the good stuff, with the calciums and the carbon and the different stuff that can facilitate your body in having more nourishing drinking water. As this water goes through the system, right, that's what we drink. There's also waste that gets created in black and gray water, right? Black water is pretty much toilet water, water that we assume has like poop in it. This requires an extra level of processing, which is why a dry toilet is a great solution that does it more effectively in a dry environment. And it creates soil for us. Other solutions, including these over here, which are the biodigesters and manufactured wetlands, make it easier because we don't have to move the dry waste by ourselves. We actually just run it through water, and the water carries the waste through a system that filters out the contaminants. So here's that journey of wastewater, right? A biodigestor is a really focused version of this, just like a septic tank. In some places, septic tanks aren't the best solution. In other places, they work fine. It really depends on your vision holder and your community, right? Again, the whole goal of this section is so you can feel proficient in sharing these topics with your vision holder to help them answer the questions in this workbook, right? So fresh water, what kind of systems are you using for drinkable water and for tap water? With this information, you have kind of a general idea of like the kinds of filters for drinking water that they can use and the kind of systems they can use to have fresh tap water that's usable, as well as what are the waste systems for their black water and gray water. Everything from a biodigester to a septic tank to a manufactured wetland, and all variations of this, right? Septic tanks, there's ones that now have electrical current that help process stuff faster. And one thing that I really want to share that I find really interesting, as technology is getting better and as we're getting better with energy, let me share this tab. Okay, there are these new devices that are on the market. I'm going to share two variations of this, which are pretty much magic. They're devices that take water out of the air and create filtered natural drinking water that you can use in your community, right? This machine up here creates like thousands or tens of thousands of liters based on the model that you purchase, right? It's a six-figure cost though. This machine costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars when you have the big industrial one for big cities. It's cool to start seeing that there are devices out there focused on water in like water critical places. These are atmospheric water generators. The image below is a more rudimentary basic model. In places that have like a lot of clouds and a lot of moisture in the air, people are putting these nets up in the air that as the moisture travels through the net, it actually clings to this like plastic or mesh. The water filters down and they capture and collect this water. So there are a lot of innovative solutions, and as technology increases as well, right, this machine on the top requires a lot of energy. It's pretty much an air conditioner, and it like heats the water and changes the temperature of the water to create condensation, and that's the water that's captured. So it's interesting to see the focus on water as we're moving through life as humans. I consider there to be like a shortage of water. It's happening in Mexico. It's happening in a lot of countries. As climate changes, it's going to be a topic. So having a good plan for our water systems is, I cannot emphasize the importance of that and the value in being familiar with these systems. So you can talk to your vision holder about it, ask him what his needs are. At the end of the day, we are just introducing things to them and asking them questions. When it comes to the nitty-gritty, we're going to be reaching out to specific service providers that are experts in the topic and know this back and forth, can give us estimates. Again, though, it's good for us as like the holistic consultant guide of this journey to be able to ask them these questions and walk them through the process. All right, does anyone have questions about water systems? there's a lot here, right? We share efficiencies and then challenges with each system, both for drinking and for wastewater. Yeah, any questions about water before we continue to the next section?
My question is only about being an agent guiding a vision holder through step 7, right? You envision it's like presenting the topics, describing what building a master plan is about and all the elements that are included, and then just like initiating a thought process for them, and then bringing in also experts in these areas to help them develop what we're pointing at.
Yes, right, there's a saying of like, we only know, or like, we don't know the things that we don't know, right? Our role as agents is to introduce these things that they might not be thinking about, right? When a vision holder comes on to buys their land and is excited to build a place, their mind inevitably, like all of us, will go to the things that we love. Oh, I'm excited to build my palapa for events, or I'm interested to build my co-work space, or I'm interested in my farm, you know? There's always gonna be, right, just like a puzzle. I love the analogy of a puzzle. There's a ton of pieces. And the bigger the community, the more pieces there are in this puzzle. Sometimes the vision holders don't even know that a chunk of the puzzle is missing. Our role as agents is to make sure they have the lay of the land, that they understand, hey, have you considered water in this topic, right? And these are the two things you need to know about water. You need drinking water solutions and you need wastewater solutions. Here are those sections and what they look like. In the Alchemy Guide, there'll be more details, and we are growing slowly but surely our journey of service providers. Inevitably, we'll never have a service provider for all the parts of the world. So this will require a bit of research on your end as an agent to reach out to a local network to establish a strong understanding of the people in that region and what solutions are working for them, right? This is something we can really support with. As the vision holders focused on getting the money for the land and finding the people, we make sure that, okay, you haven't considered water. I can give you a few solutions and experts that can come and give you a real analysis and estimate of what things you will need, right? We are just highlighting, hey, have you considered water? And here are the two components of that. It's pretty much deep as we'll go. I tend to go a little deeper because I get nerdy about certain things. But we really are here just to pose the question. Hey, have you thought about this? And here are the things that you need to think about. Let's find those pieces of the puzzle to build you a comprehensive image of your community in the long run.
Yeah, it seems like a major role here is going to be, at least in this section of master planning, is brokering people who are able to help them with the actual design.
Right. We are really the bridge, right? We are not actually doing the thing. We are just connecting them to know that they have to think about it, especially ahead of time, right? We haven't even started the building our community yet. All of this is pre-planning. We are still master planning, pre-planning, and ideating what we will need. After this of sustainable systems, our next section is building our community. This is when now all of these questions, up to this point, right, we're more than halfway through the course, we've only been asking questions and posing situations for the vision holders that they need to consider. In the next phase, we will be saying, okay, we know these are the things that we need. Let's find the service providers that can offer you these solutions and give you the specific answers. We just know now that we have to ask these questions and plan for them. And this will, right, this is the measure twice, cut once model. Where like, you can design all your stuff, and if you didn't design a water system, you're gonna have to reshuffle everything around. And that's easy to do when it's just a piece of paper and a drawing. It's really hard to do once you put foundations in the ground. That is the biggest cost eater in a project. When someone builds something and they realize, oh shit, where's our water gonna come from for this neighborhood, for these houses? Where's our energy gonna go? Ooh, we have to move these houses around, or we'll have to change this in our garden. And this is the biggest thing that we can support vision holders with, is in them having a context of those items so that they can plan accordingly for the future. Okay, okay, so that was water. It's we're halfway through the call. Let's do our bio break now, you guys. Let's take a moment. We just kind of finished water. If anyone has any questions on water, think about it. We're gonna come back in a couple minutes. It's 12:09 here. Let's take a 5-minute bio break. Let's walk around, stretch a little bit. Feel yourselves, go drink some water, as we just talked about water. Imagine your water running through your tap, where it's going, and that whole process is something that we now understand a little bit better and can ask some important questions to vision holders. All right, we'll take a few minutes and we'll be back in 5. What's up, baby Endo?
Sorry, guys. He's been crying a little, so I was in silence.
Dude, that's
But I'm loving the class. Dude, I have a product that I want to introduce you. It's called Think Twice. And it replaces the toilet lid to use the fresh water that you flush with to wash your hands first. And then the shampooed water, soapy water, goes to actually flush. And it saves a ton of water.
very
I'll
cool.
share it with you.
I've seen these, yeah, right. And it's like the sink is like on top of the back of the toilet.
Yeah. It's not
And
that
it-
weird once you get to use it. But yeah, it's made me think about it.
Right, yeah, really cool, right? We were just looking at a diagram here of like what is the use of water. Share this tab. Sharing tabs. Like, the biggest percentage of water is obviously showers, right?
Uh-huh.
And then it's toilet flushing. Out of the basic 100 gallons or 380 liters the average person uses per day.
Yeah.
Like if we can conserve that even by 50%, our pie, we've now decreased our water consumption by like 50%.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Oh, sorry, gotta take
Okay, it's okay. Mute. I'm gonna grab some water. I'll be right back. Yeah. Okay, you guys, I am back. Start heading back. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see what's next. Food systems. Ooh. Ooh, sync twice. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know.
That's cool. Yeah,
Sync twice with it.
yeah, you can put it here underneath the water systems. And yeah, if you have any other recommendations on water systems, both for freshwater and wastewater management, please feel free. There are left empty cards in there for you to dump your thoughts. That's okay.
This is actually up here. This is not wastewater. This is.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's
This
true.
is drinking water.
I
This is
can
wastewater.
move it.
We can switch this to maybe light it, and this is down, put this one up here, this one down.
Yeah, let me move it.
Okay, let me know when you guys are back. Our next section is food. Right, water is the start of our good food system. And they will be one of the life hacks in this journey. Of connecting our water system to a thriving and nourishing food system. What's up, Vivi? What cool things have you seen at the projects you've been at? Anything like unique or anything that you're like, oh, that's cool for their water systems or food systems or general sustainability stuff?
Sorry, what was that question? My internet is kind of spotty, so I
Okay.
cut out the first part of the question. Sorry.
Yeah, have you seen like any cool systems, like some things that you've seen like in the field, right? You're in the field agent right now.
Yeah, so well, one thing I noticed is that all of the projects have dry toilets because it's just such a great way to save water and then use what you're defecating to regenerate soil, as you mentioned. And one thing I think that we didn't say here yet is separating liquid and solid matter in the dry toilet. And I've seen something where they use Californian worms in the liquid part. So like you pee and afterwards you have to add a little bit of water and then you can do amazing stuff with the pee when you add these Californian worms. Because they do something that I forgot what it is, but I'm gonna talk to the person like in the project that it was at and ask about it, and like I can add it to the alchemy guide explaining a little bit what these worms do, because they're super worms and you can use them for different things and they're amazing apparently. So.
Cool, nice. Yeah, right. I think as humans, we're entering this cool phase again where we're like starting to work in conjunction with nature. Right? We are realizing nature has amazing systems, the best systems. And if we use some of that, instead of saying, oh, we know best, we can really create much better systems for ourselves. Yeah,
and then another thing is always just like capturing the water that you already like if you capture, for example, rainwater to shower, and then using that shower water again, for example, to water your plants. And that is obviously then you have to only use degradable and eco like shampoos and all and toothpaste, all that kind of stuff, but then you can just like reuse that water immediately without it having, you can just reuse the water that you already captured. So
totally, right? Like
quite nice.
Shower water, and a lot of this water, one of my favorite solutions here in water that now connects to food is the manufactured wetland, right? This is the one that we talked about in our last course. I'm gonna add a little picture here. Where like water that leaves both toilet and the shower is really powerful, right? Because of contaminants, shampoos and stuff like this. We have an option to run it through one of these manufactured wetlands. Here, I'm gonna share a photo real quick. And so this, right, using nature, using plants and soil and like carbon, like we can, I think I'm sharing this one, yeah. We can like, right, our wastewater comes out of here into like from the toilet, right? This is our wastewater flow. It goes in here into like a biodigester or some sort of septic tank. And then this enters this manufactured wetland here. And so this water, after going through this soil and rocks and beautiful plants, like reeds, papyrus is a really good one. Different kinds of big leaf plants are really good at this, at pulling nitrogen out of the waste, which is pretty much what our poop has a lot of. And the water that comes out of the system, we can actually use as nutrient-rich fertilizer to feed our plants. And this now reduces both water usage, because we don't need fresh water to water our plants. We're using wastewater that has been, with the support of nature and systems, turned wastewater into really nutrient-rich water for our gardens. Reduces water consumption and saves us money on fertilizers. I added a few pictures down here of like the magic behind a dry toilet. And I added a photo here of this like pee separator that you were just talking about. Really, yeah, a really good point to share here. The pee separator separates the urine from the dry waste, which speeds up the process of solid waste turning into fertilizer. And the urine actually, if you just leave it in vats after a certain amount of time, when you dilute that, you can also use that as the nitrogen you need and the ammonia that you need, which is what fertilizers are made out of, nitrogen and ammonia. We're literally producing the stuff in our own bodies. And for some reason, people go out and buy pesticides and fertilizers that are chemical petroleum based, instead of using the stuff that our natural body creates. Just with the right infrastructure, we can both save water and save money on fertilizers for the food section. All right, is everybody back? Let me see. Who's here? Michael, what's up? Viv, Bando.
I saw
Mhm.
this one community that they each had their own like water or like tank where they would store their urine, and after time they like each had their own plot of land where they grew their own food, and it like works with your DNA, like your own, like when you use your own urine and your own food that you're gonna eat again, it does a whole bunch of magic.
Oh, where were you when you saw this?
It wasn't in person, it was a YouTube video.
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't
Yeah.
remember where the community is at.
I imagine that's super powerful, right? There's like so much stuff that we haven't even started investigating on like how creating circular systems the way nature works again, right? Nature being, in my opinion, as an entrepreneur, the best startup in the world. The oldest startup that doesn't even need us as humans. It works on its own. And we just have to tap into that to figure out how to maximize our connection to the earth, to minimize negative effects and maximize the productivity that we want to yield, right? Fertilizers, things like this. Yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm jumping back in. I feel everyone's back. So we're gonna go and check out the next section. Here we are in the in your workbook, right? So we've discussed sustainable development, cool. And now we've discussed water systems, one of the most important ones. We move now to food systems, right? The two questions that are critical to ask our vision holders are you growing food on site? And what percentage of that food is covered by your needs of your community? And then what are you growing? People like to see this from the communities that they're going to be involved with. You know, like usually the top 5 questions is, do they have their own water? That's like usually top of the list. And then are they growing their own food? What food are they growing? And what does the food source for this community, where is it coming from? Food is an interesting one, right? We saw in a previous section in one of our previous calls the requirements for food, both in land needs, right? We saw it was like 1 hectare of land per person if you are only eating vegetables and fruits, and 2 hectares, more or less, if you are eating meat as well, right? It's more resource intensive. You need to grow food to feed the animals that then also need a place to live and do their life, and then obviously consuming the animals. I eat plants only, so I like to be on that side of the spectrum. I'm all about having animals, chickens, and other animals that, again, working in conjunction can fuel your food production, not necessarily having to eat the animals. So I'm gonna start here. I'm going now here, Alchemy Guide. So in Alchemy Guide, we go through like the details of the water system here. We described a bit. Water you'll need, the difference between drinking and tap water and wastewater, and what those phases look like. Again, remember the Miro board is a more graphic, fun, interactive way of digesting the content in your textbook in the Alchemy Guide. Okay, so we even added here a high level strategy for water, right? It is really, really great for you guys to be familiar with this. So when you speak to the vision holders, you have a context of the topics, right? Again, this is like pretty thorough, and it's more for you guys to have the content readily available to you. So you feel educated and confident to talk about it. We will always have a service provider that is a specialist in these topics there for the vision holder to execute and do the detailed part of it. Here's just the process again of like water, understanding the system, setting the goals, integrating the water plans, and all of this. Go through this, highlight things, ask questions, you guys, help the next class of agents coming through. You guys will be supporting in future cohorts to take on, like, you'll be the seniors and you'll have freshmen agents. And you guys will be walking them through your process in later courses as like part of your like agent training and passport stamp collection to train the new agents, right? Again, as more people are stepping into this space, the more of us preaching and sharing the sustainable and regenerative nature of these projects is the way that we design new systems. Okay, so all of this is about water, some things that we've learned with experience, how we can do this and create better systems. Okay, so now we're in the food systems. I am getting in the habit of starting each section with like some base numbers for you to have a rough idea of what the ballpark is, right? In water, we estimated how much water does the average person use, right? Here in food systems, we're going to discuss what is a common food consumption level for people, right? We've all heard the world of like, oh, it's 2,000 calories per day. But what does that actually look like, 2,000 calories? I made 2 designations, a little bit biased because this is what I eat, right? 2,000 calories worth of fruit and vegetables looks something like 10 to 20 medium-sized fruits and vegetables, right? Apples, bananas, pears, potatoes, oranges, different kinds of fruit and veggies. So like if you were only consuming this, you would need 10 to 20 fruits per day to hit your calorie quota, which is quite a lot. Considering it's not easy to grow a lot of this stuff and the labor it takes and the soil and literally just the labor behind it is quite a challenge, especially when you're doing a ton of other things for your community. Another example is like 2,000 calories is about 25 eggs. Eggs are a really powerful source. Chickens are actually really, really useful and functional in like a food production system because the chickens support in the land management. If you move them around, there's a really interesting topic called agro-silvopasturing, where you like grow food in conjunction with animals. I didn't put any details. I'm going to add that. Let me add a note here. Pasture systems. I'll add more info about that later. Okay, so again, we look at our agent workbook and we look at the questions that we're going to be asking this vision holder. How much food is grown on site? And what are you growing, right? There's another question in here that would be really important to add, and I'm going to add right now is what percentage of food is sourced locally, right? Creating a community is creating a whole society, a whole city, and no city is insular. Like no city creates all of its own stuff. There's always some kind of trade system with other local areas, right? In the world that we are now, it's a global system, right? If you go to the average grocery store, you see that your fruit and veg are generally coming from like all around the world. Pears from Peru, nuts from the Amazon, vegetables from Europe, and just the world is global now. This leads to a lot of like carbon impacts from transport and gives you a big vulnerability in this world. So we definitely want to have these questions to our vision holders and our own projects of where is our food coming from? Let me go here to the Miro board and I'm going to show this tab now. Okay, and so now we're moving over into food systems, right? So what kind of food and how much food will you be growing? These are super important questions to ask the vision holder. It's a quite complex topic, right? There are people who are specialists, permaculturists, that are magicians at this game of growing food and designating the spaces needed and the work needed, and it's a journey, right? You don't just start turning food over in a year. It takes many years to set up the space, grow the plants, set up a system that, in the best case, feeds itself over time with minimal maintenance. In the worst case, requires a bunch of labor, a bunch of exterior resources like fertilizers and things like this, that again, if we create a good system, most of it is closed loop, where we are generating our own water, using that water to feed the plants, taking the plants that are growing to create more soil with other sources and feeding those plants. And then it always requires labor of a community to get the food, manage the garden, and do all of this stuff. Again, in no way are you guys expected to be experts at all of this or any of this. We just want you guys to have a rough understanding of the important puzzle pieces that are in the section of food growth. In the alchemy guide, we go through some of the important questions that you want to ask when you're designing your system, right? The average person says, okay, we're going to have 50 people in our community. How much food do we have to grow? Well, here's a ballpark. If you're, let's say, plant-based, and even integrating some kind of animals like eggs from chickens. I'm all about eggs from chickens as long as they're happy chickens, right? If you have 50 people in your community, you're looking at quite a bit of food that you have to grow, right? Anywhere from 500 to 1,000 fruits and vegetables per day, which is a lot, a ton, to, right, 25 eggs per day times 50 people is a ton. It's an endeavor, the food system and the food growth. One of the key components of a food system is to have a local network. And this is probably the best advice that you can share with a vision holder and you can support your vision holder with, right? As proper community creators, we understand this concept that it takes a village, it takes a tribe to grow a village. And not just an internal tribe, but also an external tribe, right? Let's say on your land, you've really nailed growing 3 to 5 fruits and vegetables, and you have a couple of animals that produce for you. It becomes really successful in communities that we've seen when they connect with other projects in the area that are creating the beans or the lentils or have other animal sources or other sources of fruits and vegetables. And creating a good exchange system between these networks is one of the most key things that you will do to help these vision holders. we started with just a few important questions, right? Mike, the way you pose it, like, okay, right, we're not gonna be experts at all of this. We just want to ask them the right questions so they can put it in their mind and we can have a to-do list of who are the specialists that we're gonna need to bring into the equation and what are the spaces and systems that we will need to create and if not create, outsource to a priority local environment. This really gives us resilience and sovereignty from an exterior system that in case, let's say, right, in my worst case, the internet goes down for 2 weeks. What happens if the grocery store down the street from you doesn't have any more fruit or vegetables? It's a scary topic to think about and something that drives a lot of these vision holders that we've been meeting over the years. The topic of sovereignty, right? Freedom from exterior systems that could be completely blocked out and create a lack of resources that we need in our community. So these are some of the important questions you want to ask, right? For soil and food, how will we give priority to the base of our system, which is the soil, right? Soil is, in this world, our gold, our black gold that creates food, that holds water in the land, that provides natural support in filtering things for us. And so to understand this question about soil, we really need to ask the following questions. What is your self-sufficiency for planting your food and the permaculture system you will have, right? How much of the community's food will be grown on site? How many people will you be feeding? What will you plan to grow? Who will be managing the labor in your community to figure this all out? How much water is needed, right? This comes from the previous section that we just discussed. And where will the water come from for irrigation? Will that take our quota of drinking water that we need, or will that come from a closed loop system if we've designed things correctly? That's the ideal situation. So the first step is what can we do for ourselves? And then the next most important question, equally as important, is what will be sustained versus supplemented, right? Sustaining is the things that we will create. Supplementing is what will come from our local network. Nicole came up with this cool word. What was it? Not neo. I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Cosmopolitan vision,
Yeah.
cosmolocal vision, right? Which is like the beauty of creating, the simple word for me is global, right? Local over global systems, where we have all of the resources we need within a drive's distance from us. So whatever happens outside or further outside of us, we're at the very least have the bare needs and the supplements that we need. So like how much will be sourced locally of the food that we're eating at our community? The reason we ask these specific questions, right, that are on the agent workbook is after meeting many people looking for communities, these are the questions that they tend to ask us, right? Top 10, top 50 questions. These are literally the 50 questions that you see here on this agent workbook. So our job as agents, as community creating guides, is to make sure that these vision holders have asked themselves these questions and have somewhat of a plan to answer these questions in the best way possible. Workbook, okay. Here, I'm back on the alchemy guide. Should have done this. Okay, so here we discuss again, this is an excerpt from like 2 classes ago, which is like, how much land do we need to feed the community? This is our first limiting thing that we have to consider, right? Like if we bought so much land and sold so much for houses and have so much for roads and other systems, how much land do we even have left to grow food on? This is our first limiting factor that we have to take into account. Again, average for a vegetarian is 1.5 hectares per person, which, right, Mike, that piece of land you were looking at, which was like 25 hectares, right? Let's say on half of that people are living, that only leaves us 12 hectares of land to grow food on. Technically, with these numbers, we could really only feed like 12 people, a little bit less end to end. And on that huge piece of land, you would consider having a few more residents than that, I would imagine, right? Maybe 2 to 3 residents per hectare. If it's half of the hectares, that's like 30 people. So you would technically need about 45 hectares of land to feed people only vegetables. Right, something doesn't add up there. So this is how we understand, okay, this is our limit of what we can actually grow at a caloric kind of estimate. Again, I want to introduce, and I know it's a lot of like calculations and math. You guys won't be doing this by yourselves. You don't have to remember all of this stuff. This is an introduction course where you are understanding, okay, this is how I can do a rough estimate that gives me a baseline to have a conversation with the vision holder on. Again, we're always going to be here as we're on our journey. We see you guys as an extension of this team, and you guys always have the mothership to reach out to, right, through the chats that we are doing, through the agent hotline that we will be implementing more as you guys get more active and you're reaching out to other projects and taking on clients of your own. So you always have support with this, but this is the baseline for it, right? How much land do you have? Okay, great. This is how much food you can produce if you design from the previous chapters, these buildings here and these systems here. This is what you can grow. One big question that people always ask is, okay, how are they growing their food? What are the systems that they are using to execute the production of all of this food that we're hoping to have in our community? Here we've shared a few definitions of the main ones that are out there. Permaculture obviously is just designing systems that have longevity in them. Vertical farming, which got really popular, and recently I've been reading a lot of articles about how vertical farming is a little bit like equipment intensive and isn't returning the yields people expected for businesses at the very least, right? That like after investing the money into building the stuff and doing it, there's not really like a real value gain. It's cheaper to buy land and grow food normally than use vertical farming. It is though a solution in limited areas, right? Like again, in this project you shared, Mike, with that piece of land, maybe we can grow double the production on the same amount of land, and we can now feed not 12 people, but 24 people. And now we're closer to our goal of feeding 30 people, the majority of the food that we have on site. Agroforestry is like one of the ones I'm really passionate about. Agroforestry is the process of looking at nature and how nature's natural progression of pioneer trees to fruit producing trees evolves, and how we can mimic that system and help speed process that system to creating naturally occurring food systems sooner on our land. Agroforestry, syntropic agroforestry is another word. I saw like a really beautiful system in Mexico when I first met Andoni. One of his like good friends and business partners has a really successful syntropic agroforestry project closer to Cancun. Really beautiful to see the strategy there, how he was doing it, what he was growing, right? They had a whole farm and food production and delivery system that was like successfully producing. It was really beautiful to see it. I still remember it, and it's like probably one of the more successful ones that I've seen in the Yucatan so far. Aquaponics is a quite interesting one. This is again working with the animals and the environment in the space to create food systems. Fish underneath create waste, and that wastewater goes up to feeding the plants, both growing fish for animal consumption and feeding the plants that are using the waste of the fish as fertilizer. Really interesting, innovative stuff. In Cuya Bay, they have one of these systems they're testing out in different ways. And then hydroponics, which is a more like data and science-y. It looks like a bunch of test tubes and a bunch of interesting things where food is grown in water instead of soil. Water that is like hyper loaded with nutrients and runs through the roots of the plants, giving them the nutrients they need, Interesting strategy, again, requires a lot more technique and a lot more tools and systems to do it right, but highly productive in the systems that work well. We share here some experience-based practices, right? And this is where we discuss growing all the food for your community is a magical goal. It requires a lot of work and preparation and land. A major key in this journey, right, that we really want to bring home to our vision holders, right, is that creating a local network of food providers is, in the short term, the only solution to having food sovereignty, and in the long run, the best way to, let's say, spread the risk, right? There's always a chance that bugs come and eat your crops for a season, or the season was weird and there wasn't enough water, or it was too hot and your production decreases by 30%. Like, you can't just not feed a third of your community. So having strong local networks, if you have to highlight something about food production, it's that, you guys. Creating a strong local network of food producers is critical in this journey. So here I'm back on the Miro board. What you saw in the alchemy guide, you see here on the Miro board, where we discuss kind of the pros of each system and the cons, or the challenges of each system. And this is pretty much the whole topic of food production. Again, key thing for you guys to write down is, a major key is to create local networks of food production with your neighbors, with the local town, with the surrounding towns, and develop that strategy effectively. This will probably be one of the most important things you can do for your vision holder and the projects that you work with. It doesn't just apply to food, right? We talked about water systems, and having a strong network of local communities builds so much in not having to find someone random to set up your water systems or do the buildings. You find validated service providers within a local network, right? It applies to food, water, building, policies, legal situations, everything you need to know, right? Building a strong local network is the biggest piece that we can support people in doing. Just like regentribe is working to build a network of individuals, doing it locally is key for projects, right? Highlight that, underline that, write images around it. This is the biggest thing that you can do, creating a local network, right? I'm bolding it for every section, not just for food, but food is a major one right away that it has a strong effect. Okay, any questions on food? Anyone have anything that they want to like bring up or ask, or that they're curious about or would like to share?
I agree. You gotta get farms on your team, especially if you're not already a farm. Becoming a farm's a big deal.
Totally, man. Totally.
Yeah, making direct relationships with the farmers definitely cuts down costs when you don't go through a middleman as well.
Right. We saw a presentation about how, like, the value between what the farmer produces and what the consumer buys at the other end, like 90% of that value is consumed by the person that buys the food from the farmer, actually ships it to the grocery store, and the grocery store and staff in that area, right? Like, that's 90% of the value. So we're paying like almost 100 times double the price of things from it coming out of the farmer's farm to when we buy it at the grocery store, 2x or more. So right, another awesome way to cut costs is having direct relationships with these farmers and creating these networks that feed.
And empowering the farmer directly to
Right.
keep producing, especially organic farming with the right systems. Like, we want to empower those people to keep growing food for the people.
Definitely, right? Because it's not only about growing the food, it's also about what that production does for the environment. Growing food and having strong soil sequesters more carbon than most of the things out there, right? It has such a positive effect on the environment at a macro level. Like, this is true regeneration, both in nourishing ourselves, but also nourishing the planet and keeping that circular system powerful for the earth. I always like to interlude with like something that connects the previous topic to the next topic, right? Just how we discussed the water systems that can give us fertilizer for our food. I would love to share about this trending strategy that I've been like following recently called agrivoltaic food growth, which means essentially some foods don't need direct sunlight. Like in Mexico, Tulum specifically, it is so hot all of the time that most of your water consumption goes to the atmosphere because it's so hot. And a lot of fruit and food and vegetables can't even grow because it's too hot. So a new strategy that's been growing in popularity, as I've been seeing it in more circles, is this topic of agrivoltaic, which means creating solar panels, but instead of putting the solar panels on your roof or just flat on the ground, they actually elevate the solar panels like 10 feet in the air, right? 3 to 4 meters. So these solar panels provide a somewhat roof system where you space the agrivoltaic panels. I don't know if I put a photo, but I'll find a good photo. And these panels provide shade for the food underneath. They eliminate so much water being consumed by the sun during the hot hours. And you're also generating electricity. So you're double using your land here, right? You know how we describe, okay, I need land for my solar system, and then I need land for my food production. In this beautiful system, you can set up solar panels on top of your food production. A beautiful synergy in like energy creation and also food creation right underneath it, limiting the amount of development and using more of that land for other things like housing or for conservation. It's a really beautiful system. I'll share a photo of it in a few minutes. When I find one, I had one, I don't know where I put it. I might have put it in the alchemy guide, or maybe I put it in the Miro. I don't know. I didn't add it, but where is it? Okay, cool. Okay, so this brings us from the connection of food production and energy to energy systems, you guys. Energy, right? Our core principles here are resilient resources, water, food, and energy. We need water to live, we need food to eat, and we need energy to power our lives in a digital world, in just a general living world, lights, and all of the stuff that we need. So energy, again, a topic that is quite dense. Everything from how much energy you're going to be using to how you're going to acquire that energy to how you're going to store that energy. These are the main topics, the main things that you need to consider. Let's go to the agent workbook and see what that question looks like. So after food systems, right, we've discovered like how much food is grown, what you're growing, what is sourced locally, and what systems you have implemented. This brings us into energy sources. It's two questions, like what is our source of energy, right? Some people are on the grid, right? Getting energy from the local power supply, usually using petroleum and gas to like power it, or are you using renewable energy? Renewable energy being anything that's like solar or water or wind, any of these beautiful sources that we're seeing are becoming more and more prominent in the world. Again, quite dense topic, right? I'm gonna scroll down here. I'm going back to the alchemy guide. Actually, let's go to the Miro because the Miro is more cute. Here we share a few of these energy systems, right? Grid energy, we see here, it's easy to access. If you're nearby a local place, they can run a line in and you have electricity. This tends to be a good backup and allows us to get started fast with minimal investment, right? Running a line from one place to another place is usually less expensive and depending on how far off the grid you are, and it requires less upkeep from our side. The challenge is that you're dependent on the system and you're dependent on the price of oil and all of these things. The more powerful alternative is using renewable systems, right? Solar energy, we're all like quite aware of solar energy, how it works, solar panels, the battery system that's needed, the inverter system to take the solar energy from an alternating current to a direct current in whatever country you are, and then storage. That's the biggest expense, is storing energy. I will direct us here to our alchemy guide, which I think I'm on right now, VTOB, yeah. So energy source, again, we start with like some baseline facts, right? Energy is measured in kilowatt hours, which is the amount of kilowatts that are spent in an hour. The daily consumption of a human in normal world, let's say, is about 12 kilowatt hours per person per day. There's a whole series of math to give a rough estimate. We included this chart here, like what is a kilowatt hour, so you can calculate it. Lights, for example, 4 light bulbs consume about 28 kilowatt hours per month. So you have a rough estimate, right? Again, this is a rough introduction to this topic, so you have a baseline to understand things by. A TV with 5 hours per day of use uses about 7.5 kilowatt hours per month. And a heater, which is one of the more energy consuming devices, right, turning electricity directly to heat, consumes about 180 kilowatt hours per month, right? Huge consumer. Both heating and cooling, air conditioners are another huge sucker of energy. This hopefully gives you a little bit of an outline. I'm happy to discuss more about this in more detailed calls. We'll have like, again, specific sessions around specific topics for when people want to get more involved with certain aspects of this journey. Again, we will be reaching out to experts, service providers that this is their life and they only focus on this one piece of the puzzle. Our journey is to ask the vision holder what they're wanting to do, what their budget is like aligning on, and what are the options out there for service providers, right? Again, having a strong local network gives us the ability to ask our neighbors, hey, who did your solar power? You'll notice that most people tried to do it themselves or tried to save a little bit of money by getting a cheaper option a lot of the times. And this always ends up being a can of worms. Things don't get set up right, the wiring is not done right, and it ends up consuming more and then having to redo it than doing it right the first time, or having the right person to do it for them the first time. Again, the priority of having a strong local network where people can give you what their success cases have been and using those resources to your availability. I share here, again, also a baseline fact. A standard size solar panel, which is about 1 meter by 1.5 meters or 5 feet by 3 feet. This creates about 1.5 kilowatt hours of energy per day, right? So if the average person uses 12 kilowatt hours per day, you imagine you're going to need at least 10 panels per person per day. This is a rough estimate again, right? Based on where you are, pricing of solar panels and solar equipment changes. And then you need to also consider a battery. In the nighttime, you're going to have to not have, you won't have solar energy producing for you. You'll need to store it in some way. There's different ways of doing that. Batteries are the most expensive part of the system and require a lot of like upkeep and management. So again, a whole course in its own, solar energy and renewable energy, but this should give you a baseline to understand when you ask your vision holder these 2 questions. What is your source of energy, right? You can describe, okay, you have on-grid and renewables, and then what % of your energy consumption are you creating yourself? With these numbers that are here in the Alchemy Guide, we'll always be available to discuss these topics with you and help you come up with a rough calculation so that when you speak to a solar person, you have a baseline understanding of what's needed, right? They're not going to oversell you. And this is a big help you can provide your vision holder. Giving them, if they have no idea about this puzzle piece, A, that they need to consider it, and B, giving them a starting point to hold a conversation with a service provider. This is the biggest value we can bring our vision holders. There's a lot of solutions for energy, right? It's solar, there's biogas, wind turbines, water turbines if you're on a river, and different ways to store the energy. Gravity storage, which is called pumped hydro, something I like personally have taken on that I think is interesting, in batteries. We have an example here, a use case of this project Hapori. This guy here in the hot tub that you're looking at, his name is Mike. This guy is a machine. He is an engineer, builder, just community human. He's done all the research himself and built an incredible system in North Mexico, in Guanajuato. No,
San Miguel de Allende.
San Miguel de Allende, which is a little bit north of Guanajuato. And he in the let me see, we're going here. I think he is our regenerative neighborhood case study for the day, where he not only went through his energy requirements, but also his waste and water and food. We linked a presentation here. I don't know where it is. Where's the link to his presentation? Can you drop the link to his presentation here?
Yeah, I couldn't find
Oh,
the.
see it. Yeah, okay, so it's 1 o'clock now. Okay, so that puts us through energy, you guys. Do you have any questions about energy? I know it's like, again, it's a dense topic and requires a lot of calculation. We'll have service providers that facilitate us, and we'll do some exercises as well to help do the rough calculations of how many panels and all of that in a more focused class. But this hopefully gives you a soft introduction to the topic. Are there any questions, any like doubts or concerns, things that could help you understand it better? We can add some notes and we can do all that in like a more specialized course on another call. Okay, cool. Yeah, the energy one is an interesting one. Important, and like we'll share the link to his profile, to his presentation here, so you can see all the thought process it takes to calculate heating or cooling and storage, and how long the wire is affects how much energy you have to gather. It's right. Service providers are necessary. This guy's a brain, and he figured it out himself. He had people check as well, but okay. The last topic is waste management. Right, waste management comes in different ways, right? Comes both from solids and from liquids. We discussed our water waste management system with our gray water systems and our black water systems. And then we discussed our waste solid systems, right? Composting is key. Composting creates the black gold of soil for us. This is a base image of what a basic composting system looks like, right? The green layer and the brown layer. And you do about a 30-70 split, where the green is like your organic waste from your kitchen and other things, and the brown is like leaf matter and wood chips and different things that you can use to give the organic waste. You don't want it to get squishy and like bacteria, and there's aerobic and anaerobic, which is like has oxygen or doesn't have oxygen. You want your system to have oxygen so it grows the good bacteria and the fungus that breaks down the organic waste and turns it into soil, mixing with the brown stuff. Composting is an interesting one. I've had great composting experiences where we turned soil, and with like flipping it around every couple of days, we had soil in just a few weeks. And I've had terrible experiences where I made my layers too big as I was experimenting with like different strategies of compost, and I cooked my compost, and it got too hot in the middle and it killed all of the fungus and bacteria, and I pretty much had ashes in the middle of my compost pile instead of soil. It's an art form, creating compost. We'll include links to like really great YouTube videos that have inspired us and guided us through the process. But that's pretty much the bulk of organic waste. And also we have inorganic waste, right? The big key here is things that don't go back into the environment: plastic, metal, anything in this genre. We can usually upcycle stuff and use it again for other things. That's the best case. In some cases, you can't use the stuff again. So what is your recycling system looking like? Is there a place nearby where you can take your recyclables? Are you going to use it for other things, right? Like one easy one is if there's plastic water bottles, you pack them with plastic waste and you make these eco bricks, which is how we got into the whole community space to start with at EcoMall, the project in Mexico that we first worked with. The owner took a bunch of plastic water bottles and he filled them with like all of the plastic bags and like chip bags and waste that was created super, super tight until this thing became like pretty much a brick in its density. And then he used these bricks to line floors and as filler material as a solution to construction material, right? A beautiful example of upcycling and using something that could be a risk as a reward. And this is a cool way of implementing circular systems. Let's see what we have here in the Notion. Okay, yeah, we discussed energy, waste management, right? Composting and biodigesters are a good one for water. Recycling, right? Using paper and scrap wood for fire and different things like this, and using upcycling things for art installations and home supplies. Here's the report thing. Can you?
I don't have a deck with like the specific one that he was presenting during the catalyzer calls.
I had it open yesterday. I don't know where I saw it. We're gonna add the link. I'll share it with you guys so you can see like the depth that he did his research to create his energy systems and water systems and food systems. It's really good. I think it's right in
Yeah, I went through the drive. Like I remember seeing a very specific one only about sustainable systems, which
yeah, I think that's the one I'm looking for.
yeah, I asked you about that yesterday.
I was looking at it yesterday. I don't know where it is, but I'm gonna find it for you guys. It's a really good example of a vision holder really putting on his like thinking hat and working pants and doing it. And so you can see the depth, right? Again, we'll have service providers that we bring into the project to support with that process. Okay, you guys. So the next topic of sustainable systems is like housing, which we'll be talking a lot about next class, right? We're gonna move that over to the next class. And this brings us pretty much to the end of sustainable systems, right? Like the goal of all of this is to create resilience in our neighborhood. The goal of all of this, let me stop sharing the screen. Right, the goal of all of this is to create sustainable systems that give our community longevity and make it easier for it to survive and thrive through different environments, through water scarcity, through food scarcity, through energy challenges, right? It happens in the US. Places black out and they run out of energy. Or here in Honduras, for example, it's that one. Can you drop the link to that? And cool. Sustainable systems give us the sovereignty and freedom of feeling we have our space and the things that we need, and also are the baseline for living a truly regenerative life, where we are creating circular systems to both feed ourselves and take care of the planet that we're living on. I would love some feedback from everyone, any thoughts from this course, from this class. Any topics that you feel, oh, I'd love more information on this, or this was unclear to me. We're going to add notes in the Alchemy guide so we can go a little bit deeper on that and iterate for the next series of calls and courses. How's everybody feeling? How's that?
Each of those parts is like a whole rabbit hole in itself. So I mean, I don't think we could ask for any more depth on any of those that you did today. You went pretty deep in a lot of these things, like deeper than I expected. So I think it's always a question of tying into. So we have a awareness of all of these systems and all of these ways of doing things. And as an agent, how are we guiding someone else to think about these things? That's always the question in my mind.
Right. Yeah, the first step in that journey is the agent workbook, right? Again, questions that have been sourced from people's questions that are interested, right? Again, the vision holder's major goal is to share their vision. And when other people see that, they go, wow, I'm all in. I'm coming, I'm there to live, I'm gonna buy land, I'm gonna build a place, I'm gonna help you with this community. And for people to be confident in that, they need to have a lot of the key questions asked, and rather, the questions that they asked answered. And these questions in your agent workbook are the baseline of those questions that we hear over and over and over again from potentially interested people in getting involved with these projects, right? It's a very simplified series of questions, right? We've broken it down to, what is it, 63 questions that we see over and over and over again from people. And a lot of the time, these vision holders haven't even thought about some of those questions. So when there's a glaring gap, people very quickly dismiss a project and go, oh, they haven't even thought about energy. They're not ready. I'm not ready to leave my life to go commit there. So our goal as agents is to help these vision holders and projects ask those questions and at least have a plan about it. And your job as an agent is to know what those questions are and have a direct source to the basic information to ask that question and guide this vision holder into the research needed and to define the specialists, service providers that they will need to do those things for them.
I hope.
Hey, you guys, well, we're like 12 minutes overtime. We keep going over time. I'm sorry if it's like pushing on your schedules. Right, again, like you said, Mike, we could go a whole course on each one of these chapters and even sections within the chapters, right? Water on itself is a whole thing, energy, food, all of it. So again, this gives us a baseline of what are the questions and how can we find resources to answer those questions best for our vision holder. Happy Thursday, you guys. Little checkout. How's everybody feeling? What's on everyone's agenda for the weekend?
Got lots on the hands.
Yeah.
My agenda is going back up to Nabasimake. It's a really interesting thing within the tribal government. There's a division and between two sides of the tribe, and the United Nations were supposed to come here to their capital for the first time ever tomorrow, but another part of the division told the world that they're not allowed to go, but the legitimate people are there waiting for them. So I am going up there either way. I was invited by their chief in the government to go up there and witness this this spiritual, energetic battle that's happening, and we're gonna see if the UN is gonna show up in their helicopter or if they are not gonna show up. So it's gonna be really interesting for this weekend to witness.
Okay, cool, right. Right, the mixing of like the ancient world with the new world and like
Yeah, it's a whole
the bridges that
thing.
needs to be built. Yeah, cool, cuz.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And I just want to say this topic was very synchronistic because last night we had a 2-hour meeting with the chief, and he was just talking about the importance of water and the importance to take care of where our water is born, and not just to take the water from the system of where the water is where you see it, but like it is born somewhere. It is born in a spring, and it needs to be taken care of. It has a whole life cycle. The water is like it's a living being, and all of the everything that makes up water, it's so incredible. But yeah, he was just going so deep into depth of the importance of this water, and really trying to make it a point, like it's telling us like your people need to understand the importance of water, because a world without water is fire.
Right.
And that sentence, it hits really hard when you realize how much water, how water is so important. And yeah, everything would be in fuego, in fire.
Totally.
Yeah.
As you say, like the springs that the water comes from, like one of the coolest things I learned is that spring underneath, right? Every piece of land has a water pocket underneath it. And there are unique strategies of like refilling that pocket of water. And the better your project is, the more conscious it is of creating systems around like little ponds and things called swales, like little mini, like long mini rivers, not rivers, but like little mini ponds that capture the water and allow the water to permeate into the soil and replenish that well, that pocket of water, right? Again, a whole course in itself. As like YouTube, like rabbit holes, watching how people do this in different places in Africa, for example. They dig in a desert, a bunch of little holes, this deep by this wide, and they just leave a whole field of little holes like this. And at a micro level, the wind that comes in gets caught in that little hole, and you start seeing little pieces of grass growing, creating micro pockets of soil and water. And this, in the long run, can regenerate a whole desert, right? And like, there's such simple things that you can do to foster and make a beautiful environment for water to capture. We'll definitely have a whole thing on that. I love it. There's a bunch of resources on that that are really cool. Like, I see in the future an imminent water war, right? Like, maybe not as dramatic as Mad Max, but like in that direction of things, where money is not the resource, but water becomes a resource, and the control of water becomes a topic. So having systems that give us that sovereignty is going to be gold in the future. And these communities are these pockets of hope where that can happen, us empowering ourselves to take care of that. Yeah, water is key for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and leaving the rocks and the minerals there, and all the gold that was stolen all those years ago, returning the minerals back to the land. That's a whole thing.
The whole journey. Okay, you guys. Well,
thank you so much for this call. It was really fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, guys. Homework. Get in your agent workbook and continue. Right, make sure your vision is good, and start considering the other questions. I would like you guys to go through all the questions as of now that we've gone through, chapters 1 through 7, and answer the ones that you feel comfortable with, even if it's just one sentence of your vision for it. Go through that and because it's going to be a lot to go through later on when we go in and start going through each of your workbooks. So start doing that, check that out. Everyone get on the Tribes platform and share a post. We've had a bunch of new members. We've been so caught up with like the conference here and a lot of the work here. We haven't been greeting our new community members, right? Creating a local network. That starts with finding everyone globally and starting to connect with them. Find a buddy on the platform, add them as a friend, send them a message, greet them in the welcome group, and ask them, what are they interested in? Maybe it's one of the topics we've covered and you can point them in the right direction. Of like, oh, hey, check out this section in the guide. We just covered it in one of our courses. That would be really awesome to let people know about that.
That sounds fun.
Sweet. All right, happy Thursday. Thank you for tuning in and being interested in this, right? This is the start of a seed to like really create a wave into this world that it's coming. Guys, people are building places like this more and bigger, and we really need to be these like agents of regeneration that plant those seeds in different places to make sure we don't just recreate this same system that we're all not really so happy with. We're these agents. So thank you for being active and participatory in this movement. It's what it's about.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thanks for leading this group, Oscar.
Yeah, tell people about what you're doing and share with them this journey, and like, let's get another cohort ready, right? To like share the learnings we made and bring them on to like a next series of calls that we'll be doing in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I would say, after this one.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting. And yeah, there's so much stuff. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, we're going, you guys. Don't be overwhelmed. It's a piece at a time. With each process, you'll learn something new and get more confident, and it'll become second nature as you dive in more and more and start spending more and more time. We'll talk
Much love, everyone.
Your weekends, message in the chat. We're starting to share some info about the Tulum residency we'll be hosting from end of March through end of May. And then it's looking like that is going to form into a more long-term community project, right? We'll be not just doing the residency, but leading a community there. So expect more details on this in this coming week. I shared a photo of the property, like a land map of the space.
check in the agent, it's not in the agent chat, but it's in the collective chat that we're in on Telegram. We invited a new member who's in Mexico and is excited for the project, so greet her and enjoy your weekend, you guys.
Take care.
We'll talk soon. Bye.